Hi, I'm Donna Marie Davis. Nice to meet you. And I was just interviewed by Keith Andrew, who is a wonderful, wonderful person. He's compassionate, he's extremely intelligent, and he has a lot to say, and he has a great voice to bring to the table and a lot of great content. And I hope you'll support him and watch him because he's making great strides and changes in how people are seen, and he's crossing boundaries and breaking borders. And I wish him all the best. Go, Keith Andrew.
For people who want to know, what is the Keith Andrew Network? The whole point of my talk show is to show people that even if having a learning disability, I can still amount to something. And at the same time, I'm able to turn myself into an example for people out there dealing with any types of learning disabilities and disabilities, and never give up and prove people wrong. Prove to them that labels do not dictate who you are and who you're going to be. To prove them, you can still amount to something. So that being said, 26 minutes of your time, freedom of speech, self-expression, and a little background for guests who want to know who today's guest is. You are an attorney, producer, actor, and director. So the first question I want to ask you is, what makes you a good role model?
Oh boy. I really don't think of myself as that. I just try and remember each day to treat people the way I would want to be treated. So I actually used to have that on my stationery at the bottom, and which I know is the golden rule. But I really try hard. I mean, we're all flawed. We're just human, but I try really, really hard to try and do that in every aspect of what I do, because I feel that everybody just wants the same thing. Everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to be appreciated. Everybody wants to be valued and respected. And that's really the core of me, of who I am. And that is how I try and live each day. I'm sure I do much better some days than others. We all have good days and bad days. And as you know, I'm not a techie. And right now, I don't know what I did wrong. But it says, this meeting is being recorded. So I see your lips and I see your forehead, but I can't see your eyes, which I know are very expressive. So I apologize.
No, that's fine. Zoom is, win-win. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But all what matters is the end result. But the other question I'm going to ask you is, how many years have you been an attorney for?
Oh boy. Well, I was actually a student attorney when I was still in law school. And to my shock, I ended up on national news while I was in my last year of law school. So you can still represent people if you're mentored by somebody and you're given a number, a student attorney number by the Supreme Court in the state that I live in anyway, which is Pennsylvania. And I was representing abused women and children and some men, which sometimes men are abused too. I'm sure people don't sort of think about that. But unfortunately, one of the cases that I had really strong feelings about, because we all have an intuition, and my intuition was saying danger, danger, danger. And maybe because I was a student attorney, nobody was really taking me seriously. And sadly, the daughter, which was only 2.5 months old, of the young lady I was representing, was actually murdered by her father. And that case actually set a precedent for the first parent kidnapping case in Pennsylvania. And that actually, I'm still friends with that mother today, and I'm so proud of her, so proud of her. She's done wonderful things with her life. She's actually advocating as well. And we wound up, because of this case, being on the Montel Williams show to try and create awareness about domestic violence. And I was a little apprehensive But I have to say, he did a wonderful job. It was not sensationalized. And the case, I'm actually getting goosebumps. The case was actually presented in a very compassionate way, very professional. And it did exactly what the mom wanted, which was to create awareness so that this hopefully would stop domestic violence from perpetuating itself and being so pervasive. And that little girl, I'm sure, is an angel, and she's still very much in my heart. So so that was in 2000, I'd say 1 or 2 is when the trial was, and I graduated in 2000. So that's when that was happening. So technically, I really wasn't an attorney yet. So I really wasn't an attorney until 2001.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's all. That's technically, I really wasn't official until 2001.
Well, let me ask you this. Most attorneys that I interviewed don't want to be seen, or they cannot have like a split personality because they think attorneys should not be seen on camera, but you're also an actor. So do you think there's ever a conflict, or do you think that once you become an actor, you can always fall back on being an attorney?
Well, I've heard that some attorneys are wannabe actors. So I don't know if that's true or not. In my case, I was very, very shy and actually went to school for theater before I became an attorney, and that actually helped get me out of my shell. So I actually was acting before I was an attorney, which I believe helped me be an attorney. But people are very smart. You know, some attorneys do not give the jury and everybody in the courtroom enough credit, because I will tell you that I didn't have a magic wand. And a lot of times I was underestimated because I'm petite, and I'm not the stereotypical attorney because I came to law school with a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. And I was the only one in my class that didn't have a political science background or something analogous to that. So I was sort of an anomaly. And in my case, I believe it helped. But like I was saying, everybody knows if you're telling the truth. So I didn't have a magic wand. I just told the truth. I was honest. And that, I believe, is what helped me. I didn't spin anything. And I always believed that the judge and the jury could see through all of that. So when I would get to the courtroom, like I was saying, I was underestimated. But at the end of the day, the defense attorney would always come over at the end after my client would be successful and shake my hand. And sometimes they'd actually say to me, "How did you do that?" Which always astounded me because I didn't do anything. I just was telling the truth. That's it. I didn't have any special magic powers. I'm not bewitched. I can't wiggle my nose. So that was it. But I believe that my artist background, because I was actually an illustrator as well, that's where the Bachelor of Fine Arts degree comes in. So that creative spirit, I can't deny that. That's just who I am. And I think it carries over into being an attorney as well. So I'm a different kind of attorney. I like my clients to know exactly what's happening. So by the end of their case, they actually are very cognizant and very aware of what happened, the progression of their case, and they could essentially advocate for themselves at the end.
No, absolutely. And, the other question I want to ask you is, you mentioned you are a producer, actor, director. So for people, I know there's like 4 different categories. So I want to give people a quick highlight of your career. What
Okay.
started your road on all these 4 subjects, and how did one lead into another?
Okay, well, actor came first, and then I met a wonderful man named Terrence Tykheem, and he's actually an executive producer, director, and writer. And I believed in his subject matter, and it touched my heart because when we first met and started talking, his subject matter was about children being sexually abused. So that speaks to my core. And we connected right away, and we started working on a movie that's going to be entitled Abused Again. It's actually, there's only one more scene to be shot in that movie, and that's going to be starring James Russo, and he plays the bad guy. And it's a thriller, but it also shines a light on child abuse as well, and survivors. You know, how at one point somebody might be a victim, but then they become a survivor and they become empowered. So that is how the segue happened regarding becoming a producer. And then the next movie, which will be coming out, I believe sometime this year, that is finished, was regarding what happened, the tragedy in this country we witnessed with what happened to Mr. George Floyd. And that is an inside look. It's a very different perspective. It's an inside look at where Officer Chauvin was housed. How did that affect that prison? How did that affect the correction officers, their families, and the community? So it's an inside look in that way. And then recorded statements from people from sports and entertainment industry like Ron Howard and people like D.L. Hughley and the lead singer from Journey, Mr. Pineda. And they actually answer 2 questions, which are, where were you when this tragedy happened? And how did it affect you? And to hear them in their own words speak about those 2 questions, it's just as important as maybe even more important than the movie. So it's almost like 2 movies merged together. And I actually co-produced that with Mr. Tykheem. And also, he and I casted that together, and he directed it. He also directed Abused Again as well. And he also wrote Abused Again, and it's called When George Got Murdered. And there's been a lot of press about him being the first director and first person to tackle this very tough content. And I've actually sadly witnessed that it seems like his journey is more uphill. And I don't want to say that that's because he's African American, but I have seen some things that I haven't seen before happen to other producers and directors. And I sort of, I don't want to say have a sixth sense about that, but because I've represented people that are discriminated against in all walks of life, regarding employment discrimination and special needs education and special needs children and youths. So I was a federal court litigator working in discrimination and civil rights. So my ears sort of perk up when I see anybody being discredited, disrespected, bullied. It's like waving a red flag in front of me. It really upsets me. And I'll be quiet about it and I'll wait, because there's a time and place for everything. you don't just get angry. That's not going to resolve anything. You have to have a dialogue. You have to be able to listen to what the other person has to say. So I've been doing that with him, but it's been an interesting journey to see what he's going through to bring this movie to the public. And there's a wonderful cast. Mr. Don Most, who everybody knows as Ralph Mouth from Happy Days. People don't realize that this gentleman, who is such a wonderful soul and so generous, that man actually flew to Philadelphia to film this in the height of the pandemic before there was a vaccine, because he believed in the story and because he's such a good person. And people don't realize he actually was a dramatic actor before he became a comedic actor. So it's going to be interesting for people to see him playing this dramatic role. And he has sort of what's the climax of the film. And then actually Montel Williams is in the movie as well. And there's a young man named Taj who actually won an Oscar this year in 2021 for, I believe it was called Sunnyside. And he's the young man in the movie who I consider the heart of the movie, because his scene shows us how we should all treat each other, how we should all really be. And I don't want to give it away, but that, for me, that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Is he plays young Marcus. And that's, and if Terrence sees this interview, he'll know, yeah, that's Donna Marie's favorite scene. So that's my favorite scene, is young Marcus's scene. So that's how that progression happened.
No, absolutely. Now, but first off, you hit a couple of things I want to talk about. First off, everyone should be vaccinated. The sooner they do that, the sooner things can go back to normal, whatever that was. But the more simpler things will, eventually this whole thing will go away and become like the common flu. All people have to do is get off their asses and get vaccinated. Number one, wear a mask. You also mentioned George Floyd. Those police officers, number one, what the hell were they doing just standing around, fiddling their thumbs? And two, they should be fired. And they should have other charges thrown at them too. But we're not here to talk about politics. But as you were describing the film, it sounds pretty interesting. But let me ask you this. Is there's certain subjects and certain events we go through in life, like September 11th, Paul Harbert, the George Floyd incident. Yes, we gone through it and we talked about it, but at the same time, there shouldn't be a time where people keep harping on it and keep rehashing it. It's like, yes, it is a tragedy and it should never happen to anyone. But making films and TV shows and these different things, you kind of, when people do that, it's kind of like you take away from it. And I'm not saying that this film is doing anything of that. I mean, in general, like, for an example, 9/11, you lived through it. Why the hell would you want to see it on a big screen, number one? And two, yes, it's great you can hear different people's points of view, but you lived through it, you learned from it, and you have to make sure it doesn't happen again. You don't want to repeat. You know what they say about history? If you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Exactly.
And that's the same thing with the pandemic. 100 years ago, you would think, okay, make sure this doesn't happen again. But unfortunately, look at the pandemic that we're in now, because, people don't want to take responsibility for it.
Yeah, I agree. I also, I so wholeheartedly agree with, if you don't learn from it, you're doomed to repeat it. I also think it's important for us to tell the stories to the next generation that didn't grow up or see it, so that they, when they recognize something similar, they'll be cognizant of it, and so that they don't repeat the mistakes that we made. So we're here to teach the next generation. And shame on us if we don't. Shame on us if we don't, because why else are we here? We're here to serve one another, help one another, and learn from one another. If you think, not you personally, meaning we, if somebody thinks that they know everything, they're closed. And that means that they're actually stopping themselves from growing and evolving, because you can always learn something. I don't care how old you are. You can always learn something. And that actually, I think, keeps you young and vital and relevant, to recognize that you can always learn something. Why else are you still here if you don't want to learn something? So it's better to be open-minded than closed-minded. And I think, and I think that somebody like that, and somebody that appreciates things and is thankful, is probably a much happier person.
No, I agree. Now, I do have a couple questions for you off the air. But the one thing I always said to people, I used to work in a retail store, I won't mention the name, and this one woman's like, "Oh, I'm buying supplies." I'm like, "What are you buying supplies for? Besides preparing for Armageddon?" But I was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" "Oh, I'm going to send these to Africa to help the homeless." And I'm thinking to myself, why don't you help the people in this country first, so there wouldn't be a homeless problem, and then you can go off and do whatever the hell you don't want to do afterwards. But I'm thinking, if you took every single homeless person off the street and say, "You know what, we're going to put you in a hotel, you're going to get a haircut, a shave, a shower, and we're going to give you a job," there wouldn't be any homeless people. And you look and you're strengthening the workforce. If you put every homeless person, say, "Okay, we need people to serve in the Army." You have the Army, you have the Air Force. There's so many different things we can do. But at the end of the day, people only care about themselves. And that's why it's kind of like, if you can't look at yourself in the mirror, apparently you're doing something wrong. But I don't know, not to talk about politics. I hate politics. And that's the one thing I decided not to talk about, even though people did say I should have more politics on the show. Go figure. But anyway, more importantly, is how can people follow you on social media? Are you on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram? And how can they get in touch with you?
I'll tell you, give me 1 second, because I have to piggyback on something you said, because I think something you said is it's like a salient point. It's so important. And that is, when you were describing how we could help, one of the solutions regarding our homeless situation in this country, and using empty hotels and giving people a haircut and soap and a shower and shampoo and fresh clothes. What you're describing is giving somebody back their dignity. And their dignity is what's missing. That is what gets stripped away. And in discrimination cases, when I was representing people, because now I run a charity that I actually started, but when I was litigating, that's what I felt had been stripped away from each person, and I was trying to help get that back, was that person's dignity. And I think maybe that's the most important part of the talk we're having right now, is that everybody deserves dignity. Everyone. Nobody is better than anybody else. Nobody. So, okay, how can you find me? I am on Facebook. I am on LinkedIn. The charity that I that I run for special needs children and youths is called Peace, like peace, Peace Valley Holistic Center. And the website is easy. It's www.peacevalleyholisticcenter.com. And you can, it tells you everything on the website. There's also a Facebook page for the charity in case somebody wants to see the Facebook page, and it just says Peace Valley Holistic Center. and that's located in Chalfont, PA, which is outside of Doylestown. I think that's it.
No, absolutely. Well, I do have a couple questions for you off the air, but with the last 2 minutes, I want you to be brutally honest for all the fans, listeners, and even people that don't know anything about the Keith Andrew Network that should give it a chance. When I first approached you to be a guest on my talk show, when you opened that email, what was your honest first reaction? What made you say yes? And how do you feel now? Would you recommend it to other people?
How I felt when I first opened the email was very excited, and I really believed in you as a person, and I was thrilled to see that you were breaking boundaries and crossing over borders. And I felt excited for you, and I felt that you were going to be extremely successful. And how do I feel now? There's actually a phrase that I saw that I've been thinking about all day. And it's so funny that you asked me that question, because here's how I feel about you now. Here it is right here. So you don't think I'm kidding. And it says, your wings already exist. All you have to do is fly. And that to me is you. That to me describes you perfectly. You always had your wings, Keith Andrew. Now your network just has to fly. And I believe that it can. That's how I really feel. And I'm getting goosebumps again.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But wrapping up the show, it was a real honor and privilege having you as a guest. For your Instagram, will be on the bottom of the screen, so the fans will follow you, should follow you. But like I said, on the bottom of the screen, for more great content on the Keith Andrew Network, we have close to 900 episodes of the Keith Andrew Network. So there's so many of comedians, professional wrestling, actors, actresses. I guarantee you will find something you like. But with that being said, I really appreciate you taking the time. Everyone out there, make sure to hit the like button, hit the bell icon to be notified when there's brand new episodes. And as I always say to our guests, it was a real honor and privilege having you as a guest. And until we meet again, catch you later.